Blue Zone's diet versus modern day Japanese Blue Zone's diet. That's something I'm going to talk about today, so stick around. Hi, my name is Sachiaki Takamiya. I am the author of the Ikigai Diet and Ikigai Biohacking. Okay, so this is the 7th video in my series, Live to 120 Secrets of the Modern Day Japanese Blue Zones. Okay, so Blue Zones diet versus modern day Japanese Blue Zones diet. Now, before talking about modern day Japanese Blue Zones diet, what is Japanese Blue Zones diet? Because I did make a video called Japanese Blue Zones diet before, right? So this was based on the research done by Dr. Shoji Kondo, who is the author of Long-Lived Villages and Short-Lived Villages in Japan. Yeah, basically, these are a lot of vegetables, seaweed, soybeans, mugi meshi, rice with barley, and sweet potatoes. Yeah, kind of fiber-rich diet. Now, when I say the modern day Japanese Blue Zones, yeah, I am including 4 elements. Yeah, one is Shiga Prefecture, which is the longest lived prefecture at the moment, and two is Nagano Prefecture, which is the second longest lived prefecture in Japan at the moment. Yeah, and so those two prefectures, which are considered to be long living prefectures in Japan in the present age. And then Shizenha people, naturalists who move to the countryside from cities and they lead organic lifestyle. They lead a very similar lifestyle to the lifestyle that the centenarians led. Yeah. And then Japanese natural health, right? So if I have to roughly describe this diet that is washoku, basically the Japanese diet, but with kind of whole food, basically whole food organic Japanese diet, right? Okay. And then, so what about the Blue Zones diet then? Yeah. So washoku is a part of it because Okinawa is in the Blue Zones. Yeah. But there are other regions which are in the Blue Zone, such as, Sardinia, Italy, Icaria, Greece, Nicoya, Costa Rica, and Loma Linda, California. Yeah. So the two kind of regions are in the Mediterranean. So you'd kind of say, imagine the kind of Mediterranean diet is kind of close to the Blue Zones diet. Yeah. So does it mean the comparison between Mediterranean diet and washoku? Yeah, well, I can make a comparison between the two, but that's not really relevant in a way because when you think about Shindo Fuji, which means body and soul are as one. Yeah. So it is best to eat your local food. So, of course, for the people who live in the Mediterranean area, the Mediterranean diet is the best for them. And if you're Japanese, washoku is the best for you, right? So, in fact, anyone, it is the most optimal to practice the traditional diet in your region. Yeah, the traditional diet, not the modern diet, because quite often modern diet is produced by many big food industry and so on. Yeah, but one kind of a dietary tradition that has been practiced throughout the centuries in your region, and that is the one that you want to look for, right? Therefore, it's kind of irrelevant to compare the diet of different regions in a way. Yeah. And also, when you look at Mediterranean diet and washoku, both cover magoa yasashi ko pretty much. Yeah. That means beans, nuts and seeds, seaweeds, vegetables, fish, mushrooms, potatoes, and grains. Yeah. Maybe not so much seaweed in the Mediterranean diet, but the rest are pretty much the same. Yeah. And so that means both are fiber-rich diet, right? Okay. So the modern day Japanese blue zones also has Japanese natural health. Yeah. And Japanese natural health is a kind of a principle or philosophy or idea uh, behind the Japanese healing art and martial arts and many things. Yeah. And then, so from the perspective of the Japanese natural health, there are certain guidelines when we think about our diet. One is hara hachibunme. Yeah. You finish eating when you are 80% full. So that is practice in many areas of the blue zone, and it's called 80% rule. And then chewing is also stressed a lot in Japanese natural health. That is not so stressed in other regions. It is more stressed in Japan. And the last one is fasting, right? So in the blue zones, they do kind of fast between 12 to 14 hours because most of them finish eating dinner early, like, maybe before 6 o'clock. So you have like 12 to 14 hours until you have breakfast. Yeah. And then some regions like Ikaria, Greece, I think, they do have a periodical kind of prolonged fasting period too. Um, but not the fasting is not necessarily a part of Blue Zone's diet. Yeah. While in Japan, especially among Shizenha people and people who follow the Japanese natural health, yeah, they do prolonged fasting a few times a year. Yeah. When I say prolonged fasting in this case is 3 days fast to 5 days fast. Yeah. So many of them practice from 3 days fast to 5 days fast a few times a year. Right. Therefore, the question, if therefore, Blue Zone's diet versus modern day Japanese Blue Zone diet is more like whole food diet versus whole food diet with fasting, whether you include fasting or not. Yeah. Now, this is a quite a interesting discussion, really, because some people like to compare, which is better, whole food diet or fasting, but that is not useful so much because when you practice fasting, if you are disciplined enough to practice fasting, you might as well have a whole food diet. I mean, not many people practice fasting and eat junk food, right? And then when you practice whole food diet, if you're disciplined enough to do that, you might fast as well. So in fact, a lot of people do both, right? But um, it is possible that you only have a whole food diet, but not practice fasting. And I was like that. Yeah. For a long time, I had a pretty good diet. I had a whole food organic diet. Yeah. Washoku diet. Yeah. But I didn't practice fasting. I only started fasting about 2 years ago, right? So I'm quite new to fasting, right? And then um, the my experience is I feel much better, yeah, after practicing fasting because before I was eating a lot. I mean, I was eating, 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, but also sometime in between, like, at 10 o'clock I had coffee with some, snacks, or 3 o'clock I had tea break and so on. So I was constantly eating, and especially at night. I like to drink, so I like to usually drink wine. But often you're drinking until late at night, like sort of 10 or 11. That means, yeah, I was fasting only like 10 hours or less than 10 hours, yeah, a day. And then even though I knew the concept of hara hachibume, like 80% rule, it was kind of difficult to do it because when you eat, you don't usually like watch how much you're eating. Like you just eat everything on the table, right? And in fact, I am a kind of person who just doesn't like to leave food. Yeah, I just want to finish everything. Therefore, usually I was eating till full. Yeah, I wasn't practicing 80% rule in that sense. Yeah. Um, so although I was eating pretty good food, I was constantly eating. There was not much break to my gut. Yeah. And once I started practicing fasting regularly, like intermittent fasting, at least 16 hours of not eating, then I could make sure that during that period, I could give break to my gut. Yeah. Well, before I didn't. Okay, so let's look into the actual benefit of fasting. Yeah. Now, one, I can activate autophagy. Yeah. By the way, autophagy is the key to longevity. It's a kind of self-eating function. It's kind of a repair the cellular damage. Yeah. And when you are young, autophagy is naturally activated, but once you get old, this function deteriorate, and you need to consciously activate autophagy. And fasting is one way of activating autophagy. Yeah. And fat burning, giving a break to the stomach and gut, and therefore cleansing and detoxification by giving a break to your digestive system, you can cleanse and detoxicate. And spiritual awareness. In fact, many people practice fasting for spiritual awareness. Yeah. Um, the spirituality is quite big in Japanese natural health. So this was one of the biggest reasons why they recommend fasting. Right. Okay. So for autophagy activation, it can be replaced with exercises and deliberate heat exposure or deliberate cold exposure. Um, yeah, so you don't need to fast to activate autophagy, although some people say that it is different. I mean, when you activate autophagy through fasting, you can activate autophagy in the entire body, while when you exercise, you can activate like a partially, the part of the body. That's when you stimulate, certain muscles or, bones or certain parts of your body, depending on your exercises. But when you do fasting, it works on the entire body. Yeah. For fat burning, yeah, this can be replaced by exercises too. Yeah. And giving a break to the stomach and gut. Yeah, I think you need to fast to do that. Yeah. And so I would say this is probably the biggest advantage of fasting. Yeah, because you cannot replace it with any other activities. And therefore, cleansing and detoxification, because it happens when you give a break to your digestive system. And for spiritual awareness, unless you do yoga or qigong type of exercises, uh, I think usually fasting is more beneficial for spiritual awareness. I mean, when you do like jogging, like long distance running for a long time, you do get sort of a runner's high type of thing. I don't know whether you can call that spiritual awareness. Maybe it is. So I don't know. But generally speaking, fasting is considered to be the method for spiritual awareness. I mean, meditation too, but fasting, because I know every spiritual tradition they stress the importance of fasting, and then people, I have spoken to many people who have gained a certain spiritual you know ability and so on, and they all practice fasting before that. Yeah, before obtaining the ability, they have spent some period of a prolonged fasting. Yeah. So if you are interested in spiritual development, Yeah, I think it is more beneficial for you to include fasting in your diet. And in fact, Ikigai biohacking uh, kind of focuses on the four elements, physical, mental, spiritual, and planetary, and therefore spiritual development is important. Yeah, but it's not only just because of the spiritual development, it actually influences each other. Yeah. When you work on your spirituality, it helps your physical side, mental side, planetary side. So you will have a synergetic effect by working on any of those areas. Yeah. And in fact, when you talk about diet and fasting, the synergy between diet and fasting, natto is a good example. So I talked about it before in other video, right? So natto should be combined with fasting. Why? Because spermidine and component in natto, which is an autophagy inducer, does best work when it is combined with fasting. And this is because, um, when mTOR is on, autophagy is off. So mTOR is kind of a regulator of growth. And it's sort of the opposite of autophagy. When the mTOR is turned on, the autophagy is turned off, and vice versa. So in order to activate autophagy, you need to turn mTOR off, right? However, mTOR is turned on by protein, and natto is a high protein food. Therefore, first, when you eat natto, natto's protein induces mTOR, and then spermidine starts working when you are in a fasted state, about 8 to 12 hours after. So if you practice regular Blue Zone diet, maybe it is okay because you may fast, 12 to 14 hours. So for the last 2 or 3 hours, spermidine is working. Yeah. But if you practice longer fast, such as 16 hours fast or 24 hours fast, then spermidine can work longer. And that is probably the same with other nutrients that can induce autophagy. If the food contains some protein, maybe the same principle applies, right? Therefore, for that kind of thing, it is better to combine your diet and fasting. All right. For that type of fasting, you can choose any kind of fasting. Yeah. I mean, you can have a periodical prolonged fasting, like some, Japanese Shizenha do. Do a 3 days fast once every 3 months, or, do 5 days fast once a year. Yeah. Or you can do regular intermittent fasting, like 16 hours fasting every day, or you can do Hare and Hare intermittent fasting, practice 16 to 17 hours of fasting during the week, but eat 3 meals on the weekend. Or you can do weekly 36 hours fasting. Um, yeah, this is good because if you do 3 days fasting, which is 72 hours fasting, it's too hard and too long, right? To do it frequently. But 36 hours fasting can be practiced weekly. And it's good to have that period of sort of, break. Yeah. Uh, like once a week. Yeah. I feel very good to do it once a week. Yeah. In my case, I'm doing this with Hare and K intermittent fasting. So just one day a week, I just don't eat anything. But then 4 days a week, I practice 17 hours fast. And then 2 days a week, I eat 3 meals. I find this is a very good rhythm. Yeah. As for the length of fasting, if you want to activate autophagy for longevity, maybe it is better to include prolonged fasting from time to time. And there are different views on this. I mean, some people say, like 17 hours is enough to activate autophagy and so on. But more and more recently, many scientists say it's that it is beneficial to do a prolonged fasting for longevity. Yeah. So I said prolonged fasting for Japanese people before was from 3 days fast. But in this case, I'm talking about like fasting from 24 hours fast. So 24 hours fast, 36 hours fast, 48 hours fast, and 72 hours fast, yeah, are all considered to be prolonged fasting. And in fact, if you do anything longer, it can be dangerous. So it is a kind of a consensus now that you want to practice fasting up to 72 hours fasting. Even when you do 72 hours fasting, you need to consult with a doctor to see, how you are doing and so on. Yeah, right. But so in this case, doing periodically prolonged fasting is okay. Yeah, and doing weekly 36 hours fasting is okay because you have prolonged fasting, right? Or even doing weekly 24 hours fasting is okay too. But if you do regular intermittent fasting, like 16 hours fasting every day, yeah, may not be enough. Yeah. Or Hare and K intermittent fasting, you do 16 to 17 hours fast 5 days a week and not on the weekend, may not be enough. So it is good to include at least one prolonged fasting in your regimen. Yeah. Like, 24 hours fast or longer. Yeah. So in that point of view too, I find my, weekly 36 hours fasting with Hare and K intermittent fasting is very effective. Yeah. It's not too long, and yet it is long enough to activate autophagy for longevity. More in detail about Hare and K intermittent fasting, please watch this video. I made a series of Hare and K intermittent fasting, so please watch the series. Right. So anyway, the bottom line is whole food diet with fasting seems to be the key. Yeah. Now, um, so in my case, I eat natto, right? And then many Japanese Shizenha eat natto as well. But does natto actually affect longevity or the Japanese blue zones? For example, we have an area called we have an area or prefectures called natto belt. Yeah. Are they blue zones? Yeah. So that's something I'm going to talk about in the next video. Okay, that's it. Thank you for watching. Again, my name is Hachiaki Takamiya. I am the author of the Ikigai Diet and Ikigai Biohacking. If you like this video, please give me your thumb up and subscribe to my channel. And please leave your comment. Do you practice fasting? Yeah. What do you think? Do you think fasting is effective? Do you think it is necessary to, combine a whole food diet and fasting, or just whole food diet is good enough? All right. I'll see you in the next video. Live with your Ikigai!